Let's touch on mythology, myths, because I get to recognize that a lot of folks don't really know what they're talking about with myths, and this is not really their fault so much, but this is part of the society. This is what's been put out in the society, mythology. So we want to deal with a brief as possible etymology based on a PowerPoint lecture that we have done on mythology. What is it really? What is mythology really? What is it really all about? So we need to deal with the etymology of mythology and not the connotation of mythology. But let's give an example at the outset so one can understand what we're speaking about when we talk about the difference between etymology and connotation. And etymology, coming from the root of the word, etymos means true, and logos mean word or language, the true word or the true language. In other words, it's a true meaning, or what ones would say is the original meaning of the particular word. Now, the connotation is something that is basically the noted, literally, if we go to the literal meaning, is the noted, what is noted meaning, but the connotation has more to do with either the supposed meaning or the assumed meaning or say the common understanding of it. Let's give an example of what we're talking about. Mother. Mother etymologically means female parent. In other words, the true meaning of it is female parent, mother. Now, the connotation of mother is love and care and tenderness. That's the connotation of mother. So, just so you can get a basic kind of objective lesson that mother means female parent, while it's connotated to mean love and tenderness and warmth and care and compassion. These are the connotations of the idea. Now, if we would look at the reality of mother and would note which one would apply, the etymological meaning always applies in spirit and in truth. In other words, your mother is your female parent, the one who basically begot you. Now, whether she was loving, whether she had care, whether she was tender or had tenderness or warmth, and all those so-called adjectively speaking, motherliness. You know, maybe she didn't have the motherliness, but she was the one who begot you, and therefore she is your female begetter or female parent. Just to understand what we mean by etymology. Now, the etymology of the word myth, and this kind of surprised us a little bit as we went about to investigate it, because generally speaking, the general common ignorance of the majority is that when you call something a myth, you are saying that it is an untrue story, it's a rumor, or it's false, or it's make-believe, or it's made up. That's the general idea. So when we say, oh, the Bible is a myth, or someone said the Bible is a myth, usually, generally speaking, it is interpreted to say it's an untrue story, it's a rumor. Now, what was interesting in our study concerning myth is that connotation or connotative definition and idea of myth, which is far from the etymology of myth, originated in and about 1840. This was interesting. 1840, you can look it up for yourself. 1840 is when this other idea, the con game, the connotative idea, developed and came about. But now, according to the etymology of myth, firstly, our word myth is derived, in other words, the modern word myth that we speak about, myth, is derived from the Greek mythos, or really mutos, and it means story or word. It basically means a story or a word in the narrative sense. In other words, any story or any word, a word within the narrative sense was considered originally, etymologically, to be a mutos or a mythos. Now, the root mutos or mythos is the mu or the mi sound, the sound pronounced mu, and it means to make a sound with the mouth. This is the root of the word mutos or mythos, means to make a sound with the mouth. Now, in practice, mythos or mutos is closely related to the Greek concept or the Greek idea of logos, the defining logic of the universe. That's what logos mean. The beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. So the logos is the defining logic of the universe, which is usually translated as the, quote, word, end quote. So that's a basic foundation right there. But it goes a little bit further to bring the connective idea so we can not just understand it, but overstand it, have a full knowledge, not just a partial knowledge, but assumption, but so we can know what we're talking about. In the famous KJV, or the King James Version of the Bible, translation of what's known as the Christian creation, according to Hawaria Johannes, or according to St. John, we find the words, in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the Logos, in the beginning was the defining logic of the universe. When we put mutos and logos together, we get mythologia, or our modern mythology, which means, or is interpreted as the study of myths, or a particular cultural collection of myths. Now, the general sense of untrue story, the general sense of a rumor, the general sense of a fabrication or a fiction or a lie or a make-believe is from 1840. So, before 1840, the ancients, or the former people prior to 1840, this idea of a myth, meaning a untrue story, a rumor, a fabrication, a make-believe, a nonsense, or whatever other kind of ideas. So when a lot of people say, oh, that's a myth, I don't believe in no myths. Well, they don't know what the word myth really means. So really, they don't really know what they really so-called believe or accept, since the word that they're using, in other words, the components of their speech, of their so-called logic, their defining ideas, they don't understand the components. So if they don't understand the components of what they're saying, how can we trust that they really are communicating to us anything that they really understand? If they don't understand, if you speak in words, as somebody says, my mother and father, and they don't understand what mother and father means. When really they're talking about their brother and sister, but they call their brother and sister their mother and father, well, they don't really understand what they're talking about. So we really need to understand and get a good comprehension of what is myth, and we needed to go to the root of the idea. And this was what was very, very interesting, is the connection between myth, you understand, meaning word or story, and logos or logia, mythologia, mythology, and the Bible in the sense of the parables, where Christ spoke in parables, and the scripture says that unless he spoke in a parable, he did not speak or teach the people. Then in Matthew, I think chapter 13, is where he says to those on the outside, Because he asks the disciple, says, why do you speak to the people in parables? In other words, why do you speak to the people in mythology, in mythological terms? Basically, Christ's parables and the parables or the proverbs and parables and similes and likenesses. In the beginning, God made man in his image and after his likeness, or that could be translated as, in the beginning, God made man in his image and after his mythology. And according to his mythology, according to his parable, according to his proverb. Now, once we're able to digest this thought, the true thought, and the true understanding, it puts into the proper context everything else that we're taking in, that we're hearing, that we're reading, that we're learning, because then we can really put matters within their proper and their etymological structure, their true meaning.